Hello everybody, it is Jonathan from Radio Tokyo, and it is Wednesday. I actually had to stop and think about that for a second. I'm sorry about that, but it is Wednesday, August 19th, 2015, and this is actually going to be the first of at least 2 videos today. Now, in the past, we have, tried really hard to avoid political subjects, but sometimes events take place, and they're probably going to be warranting of some kind of response. As I've mentioned before, I really enjoy politics. I actually did. It was one of my favorite subjects in school. In fact, it was probably my best subject in school. In high school, one of my teachers nominated me for a national award for history and government, and I've actually got a copy of a book somewhere where all the winners, from every different state or whatever were in there, and I'm in there. Yay! Like I said, it was one of my best subjects in schools. Now, I was actually a really bad student because I was the kind of kid who actually knew what was in the textbooks, before, we even got to class. And the reason I knew what was in the textbooks is because I read all the time. I used to read encyclopedias, dictionaries, and thesauruses for fun. I used to read textbooks for fun. Now, like my Kindle is almost always dead because I read all the time from that. I read stuff online. I read newspapers. I read magazines. I read articles. I like to read. Education is important to me. But what I discovered is there are a lot of people who, they depend on, well, I was, I lived through it. I'm older than you are. I know what I'm talking about. You haven't lived long enough to understand it. And honestly, the whole were you there type argument like that has never worked. It's never been a valid form of argument to me. And several years ago, I used to depend on that, because it just made more sense to me to say that. But it's not true. But I have, like I said, I have had a real love of history and government and stuff like that for a very long time. I was so interested in it that I was actually a Civil War reenactor for a number of years. Now, I was not one of the people, who walked out on the field and shot a gun. No, I actually wanted to be a physician. I wanted to be someone who was actually educated, someone who knew what was going on. Uh, One of my major things to do as a Civil War surgeon portrayer was to interact with people. So I got to educate people all the time about stuff, and that's one of my things I like to do, and that's why like I don't know if you noticed, but when you watch or rather listen to our shows, um, most of the points I make about what we talk about is stuff that's in my own memory. Like I don't ever have a script in front of us, and that's one of the big secrets of our show. Everything that we say is entirely off the cuff. Now that's not something that you tend to find a lot of the time. We may have a set topic, but we, just all like that, we have our responses. So anyway, recently I've been looking at the election issues going on right now in the United States. And honestly, we have the longest election cycle of any country on earth. It's insane. Um, but as I mentioned, a while back, uh, I'm I I support Bernie Sanders. I really do. But that's on the national scale. On like state and local, it depends. It actually depends more to me, who says what than anything else. But just so everyone understands this, I'm actually a volunteer organizer for Wolf-PAC. So if you are a fan of the Young Turks, you might recognize wolf-pac.com. Go! That's what I do. Like it's that important to me. I actually volunteer with an organization that's nationwide. Okay. Anyway, like I was saying, I watch the news a lot, and uh, I'm intensely interested in who's going to become our next president. And right now, if I really had to, bet on who would be on the ballot, next November, it would be right now just by the sensation they're causing, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Now, I may or may not, get into everything right and wrong what Bernie Sanders later. But right now, I want to just discuss um, Donald Trump and some of the things that he's had to say. Now, I make no secret of the fact that I live in Texas. I am a progressive. I'm fairly liberal, but I have a lot of conservative views. One of the conservative views that I have, of course, is worrying about the economy, worrying about where jobs are going to go. And because I live in Texas, what I hear all the time is, well, those Mexicans are coming to take our jobs. Now, 69% or so of the immigrants that are here illegally, the ones that have not come here through the immigration naturalization process in the United States, they're the ones who have effectively just, swam over here or however they got here, uh, do come from Mexico. But unlike what Donald Trump says, they're not, they're not all rapists, they're not all murderers, they're not all criminals. Um, Most of the individuals who are here illegally are actually not in Texas. They're not in Arizona. They're not in Nevada. They're not in all these states where you continually hear all the time. The biggest portion are actually in California, but there are some that are in New York, in Maine, Vermont, Wyoming, Montana, all over the country. People come here from all over. They have for generations. My family, uh, the actual first time that my family's name has shown, my surname rather, has shown up in any record in the United States was, I believe, 1793 in New York. My family, in the more recent history, uh, came here from Georgia on both sides of my family, and they came here, roughly around the time of the Trail of Tears migration, and that makes perfect sense because I do have some Cherokee blood in me. Some of my relatives were Cherokee. Um, so it makes sense, for my family to have come. It's one of those things that I can look back and I can say, hey, I have an idea of where I came from. I may not be able to pinpoint the first person in my family, but I can look, at really good, you know, points in time where, hey, this might be someone I'm related to. It's fascinating, but a lot of people can't do that, and among the people who actually can't do that tend to be those who are African American. Now, I have a good friend of mine. I went to school with him. I've known him for a very long time. His family is actually descendants of slaves. He can pinpoint uh, almost down to where they were born. Almost, he can get that close. But the first uh, examples of who he can find in his family, you know, that were here, were born in slavery. Now, it's important that I'm mentioning this. It's important that I'm mentioning, that some of my family, may have come here with the Cherokee Trail of Tears. It's very important that I mention immigration and stuff like that because currently, right now, Donald Trump will not shut up about it. Now, I don't like Donald Trump. I never really have. I think he is a joke for a presidential candidate. But the fact that he has gotten as far as he has is actually a pretty serious thing. Currently, he is leading in all polls for Republican candidates. I believe he has 25% of the total Republican field. He is blowing out people who are genuine politicians, by 10, 20% margins. It's fascinating to see him. And it's fascinating to me to listen to people who say, well, he's speaking the truth. He's actually not, though. That's the thing. I had a few months earlier today to look at what he has said about his immigration plan and what it will be. And essentially, his immigration plan consists of repealing the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, if you've never read it, I'm going to read it to you real quick. But first, what I want to mention is that the first section of this amendment is actually the what is probably the most litigated portion of the entire Constitution. It has come up more than once because it actually affects everybody. Now you may think, well, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments do, or maybe this does, or that does, whatever. They all affect you, but this one affects you on a much deeper level than what I think most people think. But it has been a issue in stuff like Roe v. Wade, Bush versus Gore in the year 2000. It was a major player in the same-sex marriage case, Obergefell versus Hodges. It was brought up uh, numerous times. This particular amendment was actually adopted July 9th, 1868, which was like 11 years after the Dred Scott case. Now, the reason the Dred Scott case is important in this, which is a case by the from 1857, Dred Scott was a slave. He was born into slavery, and he was owned by someone. Okay, now this particular now this owner was in the military, and he wanted to and he had to move from a slaveholding state to a territory that did not allow slavery. Dred Scott was understandably upset about this because the laws at that point in time uh, said that uh, in territories where slaves were not allowed, there effectively was no slavery. Now, it says something very much about how intelligent Mr. Scott actually was, that not only was he aware of this, but he was able to get it to go all the way to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court kind of failed Mr. Scott when they ruled that he was property and it did not matter where he went. Um, so all the laws, the fugitive slave law and everything else that were in effect until after the Civil War uh, didn't really matter. There was no legal protection for him because he was technically property. During the Civil War, in fact, uh, now before I get into this, you'll hear a lot of people say, "Well, what actually happened was this and this and this and this." No, what really happened was Abraham Lincoln uh, took the idea of abolition of slavery and he ran with it because he had to. He used presidential authority, which, by the way, he used much more presidential authority than most other presidents ever have, including Mr. Obama. Hint, hint, racist people who say that Obama's bad just because he's black. He used his immense presidential authority to write executive order after executive order, which repealed and removed and restricted the rights of everybody else. And he actually passed a law in what was effectively another country. Now it's important that I say yes, the Confederacy was essentially another country. Were they recognized by anyone else? No. But according to most of the rules of warfare at that point in time and now, the southern states were treated as another country. Mr. Lincoln passed a law that abolished slavery in the states in rebellion. Okay, uh, that's incredibly important to understand, uh, and that's was one of the major factors that led to the uh, 14th Amendment. So now you have an idea, just a very brief idea of the history of it. You need to understand that the 14th Amendment was one of the Reconstruction Amendments. Um, it applied not only to former slaves, but it applied to all the white people and all the Hispanics and all the Chinese people and everyone else who actually formed up the Confederacy. I'm not, saying that there was these individuals here who represented everyone around the world. No, what I'm getting at is anyone who was in the Confederacy, whether you were white, black, whatever, You are subject to this. And after 1868, when the amendment was passed and adopted and everything, this applies to everybody else. So now that you've had your backstory, I'm going to read to you what it says. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, including Indians, not taxed. But when the right to vote in an election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislatures thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced to the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years or age in such state. Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid to comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Section 4. The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payments of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Section 5. The Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Now, what all of this means is it's very simple. Section 1 is the most important thing, and this is the reason this has been legislated more than once, and this is why it's drastically important that all of you understand. That's why I brought up Dred Scott. It's why I brought up my family. It's why I brought up my friend from school's family. It's Section 1 defines what a citizen of the United States is. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That is arguably one of the most important uh, sentences in all of the Constitution. Okay, what that means is if you are born either within the contiguous 48 states, you're born in Alaska, you're born in Hawaii, you're born on Guam, in Puerto Rico, you're born in Washington, D.C., anywhere else, including military bases that the United States owns, or even if you're born uh, to a greater slash lesser extent in a American embassy somewhere, you are a citizen. It also applies to people who are born on airplanes or on ships. They're typically given the option of choosing where they want to go. But here in the United States, because of that one sentence I just read, uh, it's typically meant, if your destination is here, you're a citizen of the United States automatically. Okay. Uh, Now, the reason this came about because of Reconstruction is because um, it was the quickest way to heal some of the wounds. A lot of the states that formed the Confederacy wanted to come back after the war. Everybody, they agreed they wanted peace. They didn't want any hard feelings. But one of the concerns was that they would not be able to block the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery. So the 14th Amendment was written and ratified and passed. And effectively it says if you're born here, you're a citizen. Okay? Period. No ifs, ands, or buts, which means all slaves who were born here or all slaves who were brought here automatically citizens because of that one sentence. Everyone who was in the Confederacy, citizen, no matter what. Okay? So after January 9th, 1868, officially, everyone who was born within the borders of a state that is part of the United States or is born somewhere that we are in control of as a country, you're a citizen. Period. It no ifs, no ands, or buts about it. Now it goes on to say, that no state, can enforce a law which will abridge that or take that away from you, and no one can take away your due process of law or your life or your property or your freedom, whatever. You're protected by the laws because you are a citizen. Section 2 and Section 3 state that it when it mentions representatives and stuff like that, it's talking about the population that you have to represent. Up until the time this amendment was ratified, effectively, a representative could represent could represent in enormously large numbers of people. Okay, and the way they were elected at this point in time was, they were voted on by other members of Congress. They were voted on by judges. They were voted on by the president. If you were a representative, you were done that by appointment. You weren't voted in. Um, that was changed after the war, and it became very important in the United States that you're actually elected. And basically, Section 2 and Section 3 state that if you have ever fought against the United States or you're from a country that is the enemy of the United States, no matter whether or not you yourself are a citizen or not, if you have anything to do with that, you will never, ever be elected. That's basically what that says. Section 4 uh, is talking about the public debt. Now, this comes up all the time. You hear about, well, we're just raising the debt. We got to do this. We got to do that. It says right here, don't worry about it. It's fine, okay? The national debt goes up and up and up and up. There's nothing you can do about it. Now, you can, do things that will lower the debt, but that means you have to decrease spending, and that means cutting budgets and everything. That has become a major issue in our current government. Now, if I was going to do away with anything in this, I would alter the wording in that. But, you know, really there's no reason to, because it says, don't worry about it. It's money, whatever. But the United States actually owes some incredibly large debts to other countries. One of our most outstanding debts is still to France because of our revolution. Still, after 230 some odd years, 239, I think. That's a long damn time to owe the money. But anyway, what I'm getting at, the whole reason I'm doing, like I'm sitting here rambling on and on about this, Mr. Trump has an immigration plan. And that immigration plan is essentially repealing the 14th Amendment or altering it. Now, he's not the only one. Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, a bunch of other ones have said statements along the lines of repealing the 14th Amendment. That's a dangerous thing to say, and it's a stupid thing to say. Um, it's also incredibly racist and bigoted to say this. Uh, in fact, it's damn near insurrectionary to say that. Like, it's close enough to saying I want to do away with the country. Uh, that would set us back at least 150 years, at least. uh, just trying to get, about 12 million people out of the country who are here illegally. And by the way, the numbers of illegal citizens that are here has actually kind of plateaued. And in most instances, it's actually dropped off since at least 2008. Um, but no, really, repealing that amendment would actually do nothing because, like I said, the number one sentence of Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States or anywhere that is part of our jurisdiction, you're a citizen, period. No ifs, no ands, no buts. No one questions it. Um, in my time, I've known several people who have come here illegally and they have become citizens. I've known several people who have come here legally who want to bring their family here. So they get an education, they get a job, they work, they send money home to get their family here. Now, they may not live long enough to see it. And whenever you speak to them, you may say, well, when are you going to do it? I don't know. I may not get to. It's because they have to work at it. Okay? That's the beauty of the United States. That one sentence right there effectively says what the United States is all about. Okay? All of our, like, we are one of the freest countries on the planet, arguably. We do have a pretty poor public education system, but we have a fantastic higher education system. We are still one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. We are in no danger of, breaking our backs paying for people coming here illegally. There's 12 million people coming here, and those 12 million people put into the national economy essentially the gross domestic product of the state of Texas every year. It's like $1.8 billion or something like that. Billion with a B, not million, billion. That's a hell of a lot of money that's coming here, going to our schools, going to our restaurants, going, you know, to pay gas and everything. It's money that's coming in. Now, because someone says, well, I want to get a few points by kicking those people out, they're not doing themselves a favor. They're hurting themselves. And they're essentially hurting the United States. It would undo nearly 150 years worth of, of legislative action that has impacted every case that involves someone and their civil rights. I mean, it would be undoing all civil rights legislation. It would be, like I said, it would be resetting us back to the Civil War, back to a time where it was considered okay to be bigoted, where it considered okay to be racist and hateful and rude and be xenophobic and want to build a wall that will keep everyone else out. Anyway, I've been talking for nearly half an hour now. I'm sorry about that. Um, there's another video coming up today. I promise it will not be, some heavy, ridiculous bullshit like this is. It's going to be about everything, basically, that um, we've been right about in all the movie trailers. Anyway, yeah, like us on Facebook. Please remember to like, comment, and share to this video. Subscribe to our channel. Keep an eye out for the Friday show. We're going to have a special guest here, I promise. Danny will be back. I promise that too. But yeah, busy week ahead. Uh, keep an eye out for what we got coming up, and I will talk to all of you later. Have a great day. Bye bye.